Okay, one last story time before Halloween, and hopefully you enjoy this. This is something that kind of happened to me, at least the first part, while I was out on a walk, and so I decided to think of a story that what if something kind of extra spooky and paranormal happened along with what actually did occur. So hopefully you enjoy this story time today. So the day started in a normal fashion. I was a bit in my head overthinking things as usual, but nothing out of the ordinary. I decided to go for a short walk along the trail near the river. The trail was quiet enough that I could hear the crunch of gravel under my boots, each step swallowed by the trees. Afternoon light slanted through the branches, pale and brittle, the kind of light that made shadows look sharper than they should. I'd come out here to clear my head, to think about the story I had abandoned years ago, the one that had started as fiction but had ended as something else. That's when I saw him. A man, ordinary at first glance, straining to drag a red Target shopping cart out of a pile of rocks beside the path. The cart's wheels squealed in protest, metal against stone, a sound that didn't belong in the forest. He didn't look at me, didn't really acknowledge me at all, just kept tugging as if this were more the most natural thing in the world. I slowed, uneasy. Who leaves shopping carts in the woods? And also, who just goes out and collects them? Then came the sound. It was a scream or maybe a howl. Felt like it carried on the wind. Not close, but not far. It was raw, jagged, like someone had torn their throat open just to be heard. I froze. The man didn't flinch, however, didn't even pause. That's when I realized I wasn't sure if I wanted to find the source of this noise at all. When I looked back, he was gone. Where he had stood, the cart remained, its red frame stark against the dirt, a jacket slumped inside like a discarded skin. The trail was empty, too empty, as if he had never been there. A crack echoed from the trees, then another, branches snapping under weight, but no footsteps, no voice, no movement. The forest held its breath. It was as if it had swallowed him whole. Above the sunlight dimmed, smothered by sudden clouds, shadows stretched long and unnatural across the path. The air grew damp, heavy with the promise of rain or something worse. The cart's wheels creaked softly, though no one touched them. I stepped closer. The red metal seemed brighter now, almost glowing against the darkening trail. The jacket inside sagged heavily, as though it still carried the weight of a body that had just slipped out of it. Then the mist began to roll in, low, deliberate, curling between the trees as if the forest itself were exhaling. Hello? My voice cracked the silence. Too loud, too human. Nothing, only the creak of the cart's wheels shifting in the breeze. Then whispers. They came from everywhere at once, soft and overlapping, like dozens of mouths pressed close to my ear. My name wasn't spoken, but the words bent toward me, curling around the syllables of my call. Out here, here, here. The echoes weren't mine. They were stretched, warped, like the forest had learned my voice and was trying it on. I turned, searching the trees. The mist thickened, swallowing trunks, swallowing distance. The trail behind me was gone, and still the whispers answered. I edged toward the cart, the mist curling around my legs like something alive. The jacket slumped inside, seemed to breathe. Hello? I called again, forcing steadiness into my voice. The forest answered, not with a scream this time, but with whispers. Thin, overlapping, impossible to pin down. They echoed my words back, but wrong, stretched and frayed, as if the trees themselves were trying to remember how a human voice should sound. Hello? Low? Low? The shapes in the fog shifted. A tree became a figure, then dissolved. A branch bent like an arm reaching, then snapped back into place. The whispers grew bolder. They no longer echoed me. They spoke over me, fragments of sentences, half-formed thoughts, things I might have written once. You shouldn't have come. The trail is gone. We've been waiting. My chest tightened. I turned, but the path behind me was gone, folded into fog and shadow. The forest had closed its mouth, and I was inside it. The cart groaned again, louder this time, though no wind stirred, and then the whispers began to recite. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the words were too precise, too familiar. The forest doesn't take prisoners, it collects them. My breath caught. That was mine, a line from a story I'd written years ago, one I'd never shown anyone. Another voice joined in, higher, thinner. The trees remember every step, every trespass. They will not let you leave. That line? Two. Mine, from a draft I swear I deleted. The whispers multiplied, weaving my forgotten words into a chorus. Lines I'd written in the dead of night, discarded fragments all spilling from the trees, as if the forest had been reading over my shoulder all along. You belong to us now. The trail is a mouth, and you are already inside it. Every story ends in the dark. The mist pressed closer. Branches cracked overhead, curling like fingers. I tried to run, but the ground shifted beneath me, roots rising to catch my feet. The cart shrieked behind me like laughter, and then the forest pulled. Branches hooked my arms, my shoulders, my throat. The mist surged forward, swallowing my scream. The last thing I had heard before the darkness closed was my own voice, reciting a story I'd never finished. The forest swallows the lonely, the voice hissed. The path is a mouth, and it never spits out what it eats, another crooned. My own words from the story had nearly burned when I thought I'd never write again. You gave us life when you wrote us down, they whispered. You left us unfinished, hungry, waiting. We are your story, and you are ours. The mist thickened until I could barely see the card anymore. I'd never been a successful writer, never published, never acclaimed, but I had entertained friends, family, myself. That had been enough. And yet, here I was, trapped inside the story I had abandoned. The forest groaned, branches creaking like ribs. The whispers rose to a fever pitch, chanting my forgotten lines, mocking me with what I had left undone. And in that moment, a terrible thought struck me. Maybe the only reason I was here because I had written it. The branches tightened. The forest was performing for me now, narrating in my voice. Chapter 3, The Man Who Walked the Trail Alone, a voice began, lifting like a storyteller by a fire. He had heard the forest speak his name, but no one had ever called him that before. He had forgotten. He had written it. He had forgotten. He had believed it. I gasped. That line, I had written it years ago, when I still thought I had something worth saying, but the forest hadn't forgotten. You gave us shape, they hissed. You gave us hunger. You left us starving. Branches lifted me off the ground. The mist shimmered with pages, scraps of ink drifting like dead leaves. You wrote us into beginning, they chorused. Now finish what you started. A branch bent low, holding a slab of bark, smooth as parchment. Another held a sharpened twig. The twig jabbed my finger, quick, deliberate. Blood welled up and spread across the bark like ink. Ink is not enough, the whispers hissed. Stories demand flesh. And then I heard the scream, the man with the cart, ragged, fading. He is your clock, the forest breathed. When this voice is gone, so are you. The bark pulse, slick with my blood, I pressed the twig to it and began to write. I'm trapped, I whispered. The forest has me. The trees are alive. They want to finish what I began. The forest echoed, hungry for more. Yes, write it. Write us. My memory faltered. What had I written all those years ago? The man's screams weakened, counting down my time. The forest swallows the lonely, I whispered. But maybe it can release them too. The bark resisted. My blood refused to form the words. The screams grew thin. I kept riding through the pain. The man with the carts, he's not meant to die here. He's only a witness. The forest must release him. It must release us both. The whispers hissed, furious. No release. No ending but ours. The twig bit deeper. Blood soaked the bark, and then I remembered a line from that ancient text I'd read for research years ago, words I thought were just a metaphor. The forest binds the teller, unless the teller names the forest's hunger and denies it. A loophole? The forest is hunger, I wrote, trembling. It feeds on the lost, on the lonely, on the unfinished, but hunger can be starved. The forest screamed, the bark shuddered. The forest may swallow the lonely, I scrawled, but it cannot keep what is remembered. I name you hunger, I name you curse, and I deny you. Light split the mist, the branches released me. When I hit the ground, the cart lay overturned and empty. The jacket was gone, the forest was silent, only sunlight remained. I staggered home, blood dried on my hands, streetlights buzzed, the world looked normal again. But when I dropped my keys on the counter, I saw the faintest smear of red on the wood, letters barely forming before they faded. Finish.